Good morning. It is the day after Christmas. I guess that makes it the 27th. You look to a math whiz for these things. Um, I'm still here in Grants Pass, Oregon, as you can tell probably by the luxurious surroundings. And to answer a couple of questions that I got on the last video, yes, that is a 2x4 hanging, uh, holding the roof up. There's also one in the other room. The roof got a little saggy here and was pooling water, and you could see that it's also a little bit bowed. This is an old single wide that was probably a tear down when they moved in, and they thought, well, you know what, it'll serve as a guest house. And so my sister Susie stayed here for a little while, and she put a floor in it, and then they fixed all they ran new plumbing and stuff like that. So it's a fairly decent thing, but it's hard to deal with the ceiling that's kind of collapsing in. So this is like a redneck Doric column, like you'd see in the entryway of a big fancy house, um, redneck style. Anyway, I just want to thank you guys so much for the very nice comments and the nice reaction to the video. I just sat down and rambled for a little while, so I thought I'm going to sit down and ramble for a little while again. Hopefully, not quite as long. I just want to tell you guys something that's going to be coming up here. Um, I want to do this thing. I want to do this thing called Philosophy Friday, and it'll be spelled philosophy with a PH, right? And Friday with a PH as well, because that'll just be sort of funny. Um, this is not going to be a study of philosophy. A while back I did one of these things. I had another channel that nobody ever watched. It's still up there. One of these days I'll share it with you guys. But and I talked about a philosophy on Fridays, and it was just sort of a me. I was at work most of the time, and I'd be painting, and I'd just start rambling about whatever was on my mind. Whatever thing was pissing me off, or whatever thing I thought I had some kind of insight on. Without writing anything. I had no clue about editing. I would just stick up my little flip camera. Remember those? I don't mean a flip phone, but the little flip camera thing. It was one of those, and I just stick it up on a tripod somewhere, just lean it up on a ladder, tape it to a ladder sometimes, and aim it at myself and ramble for a little while. And as might have been guessed in advance, nobody watched those videos. I think maybe I'd put a video up and possibly 50 of my friends feeling sorry for me would either watch it or start it and go, do the laundry while it ran. Never got monetized and never got any kind of, never cracked 100 subscribers. I didn't do it for very long. It was 5 or 6 years ago, and I was almost all of it took place either in my work truck when I was in my work clothes or actually working. So that's what I did for some reason. But on Fridays, I did a thing called Philosophy Friday, where I just sort of rambled about things. Sometimes I did that. So this is going to be a sometimes thing. It's not going to be every single Friday because sometimes there'll be events going on, and oftentimes Jason will have something that's right up to the minute, and might want to release that on a Friday, and so I'll skip that Friday. It's not going. None of this stuff is going to be time stamped. None of this stuff it's frustrating trying to do a channel like we've done because uh, something will come up and it's the hot topic that day, and we know that if we put a sort of a clickbait title on it, I don't want to imply that we ever do anything dishonest in our titles. I think we don't, but if we put something up that's it's a little bit up to the minute, um, it'll get a lot of views. And we're sort of the channel is in the business of getting a lot of views if possible. So it puts me in a kind of quandary. Sometimes I want to say things that have nothing to do with that, but I feel like I'm not going to do that right now. So I'm going to be making these things, and I will plug one of them in sometime in every month on a Friday. And this is just going to be basic knowledge about life. When I was 34 years old, I went into AA to deal with my drinking issue, and it was the first time that I got sober for a period of time. And then later, I went back out in the world and sowed some wild oats in a very aggressive way. And then now I'm coming up on 10 years without a drink. But it was the first time that I'd gone to AA. And I was 34 years old, and I met a guy named Ed Kirsty in the meetings, and the idea was everyone was supposed to have a sponsor, and I didn't really want a sponsor per se. And Ed was, in my view, just the smartest guy there. And Ed didn't really want to sponsor anybody. So I talked to him once and I said, I'm kind of circling you, Ed, and I like what you talk about. I think we should have some conversations and I can learn from you. And he said, well, why don't we be friends and hang out a little bit? And Ed was 74 and I was 34. So we had a 40-year gap in between us. And looking back on it, I'm pretty sure that one of the reasons I was able to take in some of what Ed told me rather than resist it is that my ego, as it was at that time, there's the ego of a drunk. They'll tell you in the meetings that if you ever go to AA meetings, you'll hear the phrase that they are ego egotists or egomaniacs with an inferiority complex, and that pretty much sums up a lot of the style of drunk that I was. I thought I knew everything, and at the same time, I was terrified of being exposed as knowing nothing. So I probably would have not been able to take in the things that Ed was sharing with me, these insights and these bits of cobbled together philosophy and religion and just generalized ideas about how best to live. I mean, that's what I think of philosophy as how best to live. I would not have been able to take these ideas in if not for the fact that Ed was more than twice my age. And there was a 40-year span between us and 4 neat decades between us. And I was able to say, in my own mind, I was able to say, oh, he's no smarter than me. Listening to him isn't an insult to my intelligence. He's just me with twice the life experience. So I can listen. And he was so accurate to he would say, I suspect you're going through this. And he would just nail it. And I thought he's just really a similar model. When we rolled out of the People Factory, we were the same basic model. He was whatever year he came out, and I was whatever year I came out. And 40 years apart, but basically the same model of human. And so I was able to learn so much from Ed, and Ed only lived for a couple of years after that. And I spent as much time as I could, but it wasn't with him. I spent as much time as I could, but it wasn't really a thing where we got together, every week necessarily. There would just be times I'd sort of run into him and say, hey, you got a minute? And we talk for 2 hours. Or sometimes I would actually contact him. This was before email. This was before all of the, it's not like, oh, I friended him on Facebook. It wasn't anything like that. We just sort of organically ran into each other around the culture of AA and a particular place in Temple City, California called the Temple City Alano Club, which is a sort of a place devoted to having meetings and where people who are, trying to get sober can hang out. So I don't go to AA much anymore. I haven't felt the need of it all that much in the last few years, but some of Ed's wisdom came from the AA thinking, and a lot of it came from other places. And so the only common thing was it worked for Ed. And it worked for Ed after a long period of trial and error. He was like me, a smart guy with a little bit of a talent for self-destruction. So his stuff had come to him in a hard knocks method. And by the time I knew him, he had reached a place of calm and peace and understood his life, had a great sense of humor, wasn't offended easily or at all by anything. And I thought, I want what this guy has, so I'm going to listen. And so I took in nuggets of information from him, and over time I sort of tested them by sort of doing them and seeing how that worked. And then, of course, because there's no other Dave somewhere as a lab rat experiment control, getting a different experience, I would go and sort of do the opposite of what I'd been advised to do. And this has only occurred to me when I would look back on a period of time, and I'd say, I just did exactly what Ed said don't do, or I just did exactly what Ed said to do. And so I kind of did I was my own lab rat, is what I'm saying. I was my own guinea pig. And so the stuff that I will tell you, but I wanted to say that it seemed to me that Ed had a sense that his time was coming, and that maybe he had met the younger version of him that might someday be able to carry some of this forward. And so it seemed like to me, again, in retrospect, that he was downloading his wisdom into me in a sense, so that maybe later I could upload it to some other people. Again, we do these things in life that we look back upon them and go, God, that in some way I was being guided either by my wiser self or providence or God, if you prefer, whatever you think may be guiding you. It was one of those situations. There wasn't a lot of small talk. We'd get together and I would say, Ed, this is what I'm going through. And he would lean back in his chair and cross his legs and say, what I suspect is happening here, Davy. He always called me Davy. I loved that because only my mother called me Davy when I was a little boy, and nobody else has ever called me Davy. So if you're my friend, you may call me Davy. I give you my blessing. But he uh, he would he would use that kind of terminology. What I suspect is happening, as opposed to, okay, sit down, let me tell you what you're going through. He didn't ever take that sort of phraseology. It was always just, I suspect that what is going on. Because then what I'm hearing is, oh, he's investigating. He's helping me investigate. He's like a detective with the information I've just given him about, all the things that are going wrong in my life. And he's going to help me find the suspected problem. So even the way he spoke and talked to me, he was never quoting great philosophers or great psychologists. Like, sometimes you'll watch a Jordan Peterson thing and it's like he's got to go through all of this sort of, because he comes out of academia, he's constantly got to be connecting his ideas, many of which are just out of his own fantastic mind. But he has to sort of connect them to other things because that's what academics do. They sort of build the provenance, as they would call it, of an idea. And I'm not going to do any of that. If I happen to have just read something from somebody, maybe it might be Jordan Peterson that I'll share with you. I will quote that person. But basically, this is just common sense stuff that I've picked up that you may already have heard from an old guy in your neighborhood or from your dad. And some of this stuff I bet I did hear from my dad and just couldn't take it in because I was rebelling against my dad when I was younger, when he was bothering to give me his wisdom. And fathers and sons, it's a problematic thing. You know what I mean? There's a natural desire of the son to be symbolically killing off the father in order to declare himself a man and in order to come into himself. And this happens with men and women, with women and their mothers too. And I want to say that the last video I did, the Christmas thing, was kind of addressed to guys, and a lot of women said, "Yeah, it's us too." And so I don't want this to just be a guy centric, but it will be a little bit guy centric because I'm a guy, and a lot of what I've gone through has been sort of in reaction to women and to those things that are specifically expected of guys. So it's going to have a little bit of that to it, and hopefully it'll be somewhat helpful to y'all women's out there. Anyway, it's going to be called Philosophy Friday, and I'm going to start it hopefully next week, unless there's some earth-shattering thing that either Jason or I wants to get on by way of, yelling at the left. I mean, on the one hand, I'm in that fight. I'm in that fight because that's a fight that's a real fight. And on the other hand, sort of my wiser self is standing off to the side sometimes going, dude, relax, relax, spend more of your time out making friends and a little less of your time focusing on what makes you pissed off about the people who aren't your friends. So but it's the duality of being a human being. It's the different sides of each of us. I've got that side of me that loves a good fight and loves to use my intellect and my ability to write to take some spokes out of the wheels of the machine that I believe is leading us in the wrong direction, and to so hopefully add some lubrication and fuel to the machine that can pull us in the direction that I see fit. And that sort. But really, politics is really a type of it's really a type of philosophy for governing. So you have to have some basis in philosophy if you're going to then say, okay, let's root our ideas of policy in this sort of philosophy. And that's why philosophically, you and I, most of you are conservatives, you and I are conservative, and many of us have come to it later in life after starting out as sort of default liberals because, I mean, that's what everybody around us was. Um, it's the philosophy that has to sort of be understood and nailed down and figured out. The moral codes have to be firm, whether they come directly out of religion or or a combination of religion and other philosophical thought, whatever. Um, you have to have that stuff nailed down firmly. You have to have some real idea of, okay, not so much who am I, but what am I? What sort of creature am I? And in what situations do I thrive? And in what situations will I fail to thrive? Why do we get depressed? Why do we feel isolated? Why do we sometimes prefer to fight with others rather than to sit down and calmly discuss things through? These riddles. Why do we drink too much? Why do we do drugs? Why do we eat so much that we make ourselves sick and sore in the knees? Um, how do we turn it around? How do we get to understand what we are as humans, and then after that figure out who we are as people, understand with and how we can take that understanding of what we are and turn it into proper action. How best to live, basically, is what we're looking at. So we're coming right up on New Year's, and many of us will be making resolutions. And I may do a thing about resolutions, or I may just open up a thread for you guys to tell what your resolutions are. And uh, another thing I wanted to tell you is that I'm feeling this kinship lately, and I know some of you are too, not just with you guys toward me and toward Jason, whatever. Jason and I are two individuals with two kind of different missions here on the channel. Um, but I feel like there's a kinship developing, and I'm going to look into ways that maybe I can get a website or something like that with some chat boards or something like that. And when I see something that's happening that seems to be getting you guys to want to talk with one another, that we could open up a chat for that, and you guys could actually exchange information more directly. You might find people that live right near you that you really want to invite to your next barbecue. And so um I don't know about that stuff. I kind of got online after chat rooms had sort of gone away. So I'm going to have to talk to some people who know about chat rooms and see how that's set up and what we can do. But I think that would be great if there could be some way that you could, or as you're commenting, one of the things you might want to do is in the comment in all caps say California, or from California, or from Arizona, or from Michigan, or whatever, and begin to be able to scroll through the threads and find some people. And you the thing is, Facebook is set up perfectly to get responses, because if you make a comment and then somebody comments on your comment, replies to your comment, you see that pop up on the top of your Facebook feed. Not so with YouTube. It's not designed for arguments, I mean, that's what makes it good. It's not designed for arguments, but Facebook wasn't designed for arguments. It was designed for the exchange of information. It just turns out that we humans turned that into a design for arguments because it works really well, man. You could look back on, oh, somebody dared to stand against me in my my powerful commentary. Oh, they will suffer. But that's not going on YouTube. We're going to have to engage something else, some other chat room, something like that can be done through a website, so that we can. It's so often that one of you guys will, or ladies, um, will leave a comment that I think, I like this person's mind. I would like. There's no reason in the world I can't be friends with this person, and I will say something like that, and they'll never hear, comment back. Hey, it'll be great to meet you sometime. Nothing. Or people will say that to me, hey man, if you're going through Sacramento next week, stop in for a cup of coffee, and I will respond saying, yeah, we can maybe make that happen. And then I never hear back from them because nothing triggers them necessarily. So we're gonna have to work on some of this stuff. If any of you are interested, maybe some of you will understand this better than me and can write to me on my email address and let me know. Uh, so anyway, that's all I wanted to talk to you about right now. We do have resolutions coming up, and I would hope that most of us will try to think in terms of that sort of phrase, how best to live, when we're talking about our resolutions. Excuse me, tail end of this cold. Um, I would hope that we would be thinking about that rather than just I swear I'll clean my garage, or I will make a habit of making my bed every day. All that stuff's good too, but I would hope that some of us will have resolutions that have a slightly larger philosophical philosophical scope. Um, I'm beginning to lose my ability to talk, so I'm going to end this. And just thank you guys once again for so many of you watching that video. And it was great. It took 3.5 hours to upload that video because it was long. And this one's kind of long too, I can tell. So I'm going to take this and I'll edit it really quickly, see if there's anything I gotta get it out of it, and then I'm gonna run down to Grants Pass and find a coffee house and upload it. So you guys should hopefully get this by about noon. It's 8:30 exactly as I am signing off here. So again, I'm glad you all had a Merry Christmas. You made my Christmas much merrier by with all your kind comments. I'm certain you all were doing that for one another as well. And it's all good. Let's not go into this coming year with this sense of impending civil war. We can get this. We can figure this out. We can figure out how to communicate these ideas on the political end of things in ways that will win over people to our side who are now in that big middle that is looking over at the hard left and going, okay, I'm not sure I can call myself a Democrat anymore, but geez, I don't know if that big orange guy's kind of scary, and all of those people, all of his guys look like a bunch of tribal heathens. They look at us, because we can be pretty aggressive over here too. So um, uh, maybe we'll figure out ways to cool the dialogue out a little bit and start pulling in some people from some moderates over to the moderate right as opposed to the moderate left where they will just hold their nose and vote for the Pelosi's and Schumers of the world instead of kind of holding their nose and voting for one of our guys. um, that's the thing. Moderates they see both sides. They see both sides, so that's why they're moderates, right? So that we need to bring more of them over to our side so that we can continue this sort of breaking apart this structure of political correctness and cancel culture and government solutions for everything. We all know there's some things that only government can do, but I mean everything, that's what they're leading toward, just government in every area of our lives. And so I won't get into that anymore now. It's going to be called Philosophy Friday, and I expect that these will be not be the best viewed videos, but I know there's some of you out there that like getting into ideas, and you'll have a whole thread where you can hear what I'm saying and go, almost right, Dave. Here's what I've learned in addition to what you've said. And that will be completely cool. I'm not going to be coming from a place, oh, yeah, this is what I've learned how it is for everybody. If you happen to be wired kind of like me, um, and been through some similar life experiences, and your intelligence and the things that interest you are kind of similar to me. So in other words, if we are similar types of dudes and women who are similar to me as well, that's what it is. It's going to be just me taking the stuff that Ed gave to me and that I learned from other sources and that just rung true to me, the word that tickled my inner common sense. It's just going to be me handing them back over, and most of them will be written essays. They're not going to be these long 20-minute rambles or 25-minute rambles. So anyway, that is my 25-minute ramble for today. So Uh, Thank you for your support over Christmas, and I wish you all a very happy New Year. Namaste, man. Coming from California, or in this case, Oregon.